Honey, I want to kiss you. Honey, it's so cold here. I want to sleep with you. Honey, why haven't you come to see me yet? It had been less than a month since our fake marriage, and my arranged marriage partner had lost his memory in a car accident. Ms. Jiang, the results are out. Mr. Gu suffered a concussion due to the car accident, which led to temporary memory loss. The doctor said that as long as he gets more rest in the coming days, his memory will gradually recover. Special Assistant Smith stood beside me and replied to me. I looked through the window of the hospital room at the man lying inside. I couldn't help but wonder, did Michael Grant lose his memory? He clearly remembered my name was Emily Crawford, remembered that we were husband and wife, remembered everything. But how could he not remember that we got married under an agreement, that it was a fake marriage? Honey, why haven't you come in to see me? I don't know when Michael Grant, who was lying in the hospital bed, saw me. He turned sideways and said to me, standing outside the window, as if afraid that I wouldn't notice, honey, you finally came to see me. As soon as I opened the door, I caught the excitement in Michael Grant's voice. Just a few days ago, we were still polite and distant, a fake couple in name only. But how did everything change today? Before, Michael Grant would only call me Ms. Jiang in a deep voice in private, or call me Mrs. Gu with a cold face in public. But today, he kept calling me honey. I pretended to be calm and said, "Are you hungry? Should I ask Special Assistant Smith to buy you something to eat?" Michael Grant blinked and looked at me. Honey, I'm not hungry. It's so cold here. Honey, can you lie down with me? I was speechless for a moment. If it's cold, turn up the air conditioner. Oh. It seemed that my attitude was too cold. Michael Grant didn't dare to say anything more and lay there, obediently looking at me. I picked up the air conditioner remote control beside me and adjusted the temperature to 26 degrees. If you need anything else, just say it. I'll convey it to Special Assistant Smith. Honey, my head hurts. I want you to sit here and keep me company. I was speechless again, but I couldn't resist his clingy ability after losing his memory. So I moved the chair over and sat beside Michael Grant. I had just sat down for a while when I heard Michael Grant continue. Honey, I want to go home and sleep with you tonight. I instinctively refused. The doctor said you need to stay in bed and recuperate in the hospital during this period. I can also stay in bed and recuperate at home. I promise I won't go anywhere. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Honey. Michael Grant looked at me expectantly without blinking, his eyes shining like a puppy, just missing the wagging tail as he waited for my answer. I softened my heart and agreed. As soon as we got home, Michael Grant dragged his suitcase into the master bedroom. I couldn't stop him. I saw him walking straight towards the walk-in closet with the coat he had just taken off. A moment later, he came out looking incredibly shocked and looked at me pitifully as if he had been abused by me. Honey, why aren't there any of my clothes in the walk-in closet? How could I explain to him that we usually slept in separate beds? I slept in the master bedroom, and he slept in the guest bedroom. I smiled. You usually sleep in the guest bedroom, so your clothes are all in there. Honey, did we fight before? Are you angry? So you won't let me sleep in the master bedroom? The sadness in Michael Grant's eyes deepened, as if he had just realized that not only had he been abused by me, but he had also been kicked out of the house. You volunteered to sleep in the guest bedroom. It has nothing to do with me at all. At that time, Michael Grant couldn't avoid me enough. How could he possibly sleep in the same room as me? So the day he moved in, he took the initiative to ask for separate rooms and left the master bedroom to me. We both calmly accepted this marriage in name only, but unexpectedly, Michael Grant lost his memory then. Honey, can I move into the master bedroom and sleep with you tonight? Michael Grant looked at me pitifully. I refused mercilessly. No, you can't. At night, just as I finished washing and lay down on the bed, I heard a knock on the door. I opened the door, and Michael Grant walked in with a quilt in his arms. He said weakly, Honey, My head hurts so much. I was still stunned by Michael Grant's series of actions. Before I could react, I saw that he had already lain down on my bed and was about to close his eyes and rest. What? If your head hurts, why don't you go to the hospital? What are you doing lying on my bed? Michael Grant closed his eyes and stuck out a hand from under the quilt to pat the space beside him. Honey, aren't you sleepy? Come and sleep with me. The man's sleepy voice at the end was a bit slurred, making me feel as if I was being unreasonable in the middle of the night. I was furious and shouted at the man lying on the bed. Michael Grant, get off my bed right now and go back to your bedroom to sleep. Michael Grant still had his eyes closed and said weakly, Honey, stop shouting. If you shout again, my head will hurt again. And Special Assistant Smith and the doctor are all resting. We can't disturb others' sleep in the middle of the night. Right. Fine. Then you sleep in the master bedroom. And I'll sleep in the guest bedroom. I rolled up my quilt and was about to walk towards the guest bedroom. I don't know when the corner of the quilt was pressed under the man. No matter how hard I pulled, I couldn't pull it out. Just as I was about to make a final effort, my wrist was tightly grasped by someone. Honey, my head hurts so much. Can you give me a massage? I looked up at Michael Grant lying beside me and realized that his lips were frighteningly paled. I was a bit worried. I'll call Special Assistant Smith now and take you to the hospital. No, honey. Come to bed and give me a massage. Seeing that I didn't react for a long time, Michael Grant started calling me by my nickname, and there was a bit of cold sweat on his face. Juan Juan, Juan Juan. My head hurts so much. I had no choice but to take off my shoes and get on the bed next to Michael Grant. I reached out and massaged his temples. I only felt relieved when I saw his face gradually relax. When I woke up the next day, I saw Michael Grant lying on his side, facing me. Honey, you're awake. Michael Grant looked at me with bright eyes as if he had been waiting for me for a long time. I rubbed my eyes a bit uncomfortably. Before I was fully awake, I heard Michael Grant say softly, Honey, can I kiss you? This sentence woke me up immediately. I moved back, wrapped in the quilt, covered my face with the quilt, and only showed a pair of eyes looking at him warily. Michael Grant seemed to chuckle. Before I could say anything, he leaned straight towards me. A shadow suddenly fell in front of me, and I instinctively closed my eyes. Suddenly, a warm touch landed on my forehead. The man smiled at me and said, Honey, that's my good morning kiss. On my way to work, my phone kept buzzing on the desk. When I opened the screen, it was WeChat messages from Michael Grant. The messages from the whole afternoon almost filled the entire screen. Honey, when will you come home? I miss you so much. Honey, do you miss me? Honey, 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 please talk to me. Honey, do you not love me anymore? Honey, can I pick you up after work? Honey, you haven't talked to me for 3 hours. I swiped open the message box and typed a few words to reply to I'm at work. Don't disturb. Just as I sent the message, Michael Grant made a video call. I originally wanted to reject it directly, but I was afraid that his headache would return while he was alone. After hesitating for a moment, I answered the call. Honey, I miss you so much. In the video, Michael Grant was wearing dark gray loungewear and was half reclining on the pillow at the head of the bed. His voice a bit clingy. I ignored him and directly asked, Is there anything? Honey, can I pick you up after work? The man looked at me excitedly. I firmly refused. No. Michael Grant's eyes immediately dimmed. I felt a bit sorry for him. So I added, The doctor said that your current condition is suitable for quiet rest. Moving around might cause sequelae. And I'll have a driver pick me up after work. So don't worry. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up. I still have several documents to deal with. After reading a long paragraph, I could feel Michael Grant's frustration at this moment even through the screen. Michael Grant looked at me and didn't say anything for a long time. After a while, he replied pitifully, Okay then, honey. Come home early. I miss you so much. It was the time. and the crowd was crowded. I walked out of the company building and headed towards where the driver was parked. A man wearing a black coat and a baseball cap suddenly bumped into me. The other person was wearing a mask, and I couldn't see his face. He walked away in a hurry without even apologizing. I looked down at my ankle. I was wearing a pair of thin high heels today. It seemed that I sprained my ankle when I was bumped, and it looked a bit red. The driver beside me quickly ran over to help me, but I waved my hand to indicate that it wasn't necessary. When I turned around to look again, the person who had caused the accident was already out of sight, just before getting in the car. I always felt that there was an uncomfortable gaze sticking to my back, like a water snake in a dark pond secretly staring at me from the shadows. As soon as I unlocked the door with my fingerprint, I saw Michael Grant standing tall and straight in the entrance hall. I didn't know how long he had been standing there waiting for me. When he saw me come in, the curve of his lips couldn't be hidden. Before I could change my shoes, Michael Grant picked me up in a princess carried. I was so startled that the bag in my hand fell to the ground. Michael Grant held me tightly and rubbed his face against my neck. Just like a puppy waiting for its owner to come home from work, the man said in a lingering tone, "Honey, I miss you so much." This was already the third time I had heard this today. Michael Grant, after losing his memory, was extremely clingy. Sometimes I felt that the things that had happened in the past few days were like a dream, and when the dream ended, everything would go back to the way it was. Michael Grant would still be Michael Grant, and I was just the Mrs. Gu who needed to accompany him on some occasions. So I always reminded myself not to indulge in it. Everything was just an act for the occasion. Whoever fell in love first would lose. My ankle was starting to hurt. Michael Grant only then noticed that my ankle was red. He quickly carried me to the sofa in the living room and placed me down. "Honey, what's wrong with your foot?" Before I could answer, the man hurriedly went to the drawer and took out the first aid kit. I was just about to remind him that the doctor had told him to rest at home, but then I saw the sofa beside me sink. The man sat beside me with the first aid kit and placed my calf flat on his thigh. I saw him being so cautious, as if he was facing a great enemy, and I felt like laughing a bit. I opened my mouth to soothe him. "It's just a slight sprain. It's okay." Michael Grant didn't say anything. He frowned and carefully applied a layer of ointment to my ankle. After making sure that the red area was all covered, he looked up at me and said, "Honey, don't move around for now. If it swells up tonight, I'll apply an ice compress for you." Michael Grant's expression looked very serious, just like he was before losing his memory. Cold, when he had a straight face. He was even a bit scary. That time, when I got home from work every day, I would always face darkness. Michael Grant got off work very late, usually coming home around 9 or 10 o'clock. By the time he got home, I was already washed and lying in bed, and he got up and went to work earlier than me in the morning. So even when we were at home, we rarely met. He was like a heartless work robot, working all the time every day. Even if we happened to meet occasionally, he would only call me Ms. Jiang or Mrs. Gu in a very proper way. Only Michael Grant, after losing his memory, would keep calling me honey, honey, honey. Did you hear what I said? My thoughts came back, and in front of me was still Michael Grant after losing his memory. The heat in his eyes when he looked at me was something that Michael Grant, before losing his memory, didn't have. "I heard you, but if I don't move, how can I eat and wash later?" As soon as I finished speaking, I saw a playful smile appear in Michael Grant's eyes. He leaned over to my ear and exhaled, saying, "Honey, I'll help you." I shrank back a bit. I always felt that Michael Grant now had some ulterior motives. At night, Michael Grant, under the pretext of taking care of me, refused to leave the master bedroom again. He also reminded me not to forget the goodnight kiss today. When Michael Grant's gentle kiss landed on my forehead, I seemed to hear the sound of my heart beating faster. Mr. Gu, the vehicle inspection report is out. The brakes were indeed tampered with secretly. I woke up from my sleep, and there were faint voices of conversation coming from the living room. I opened the door and saw Special Assistant Smith and Michael Grant sitting in the living room, discussing business matters. There were also several documents on the table, which should be for Michael Grant to review. "Honey, you're awake," Michael Grant said excitedly when he saw me. He completely lost the calm and reserved look he had just now. He put down the documents in his hand and was about to stand up and walk towards me. I quickly stopped him. No. You guys continue talking about business. Special Assistant Smith, standing not far away, nodded to me. Madam. I nodded. And then I saw Michael Grant, who didn't stop at all. There are seats in the study. Why didn't you go to the study to discuss business? It's all small matters. And we've already finished discussing. Michael Grant walked up to me, and his eyes, looking at me, were full of warmth. Michael Grant seemed to be in an especially good mood this morning. He took my hand and was about to walk towards the dining room. Honey, let's go have breakfast together. Before we had walked a few steps, he seemed to suddenly remember something and turned his head to look. Special Assistant Smith, have you had breakfast? Michael Grant smiled and said to Special Assistant Smith. But there was an obvious threat in his eyes. Special Assistant Smith immediately understood and quickly picked up his briefcase and walked outside. I've had it. I've had it, President. I won't disturb you. I'm leaving now. Before I could persuade him to stay, Special Assistant Smith had already scurried away. When there were only the two of us left in the mansion, Michael Grant's face might as well have had the word satisfied written on it. Honey. Look. This is the lobster bisque that I asked Aunt Zhang to make specially for you. The man thoughtfully pulled out the chair at the dining table. After I had sat down, the man sat in the seat beside me. Michael Grant scooped up a spoonful of the small wontons in the bowl and naturally held it to my mouth. The first wonton in the morning. Honey, you eat it first. My ears seemed to get a bit hot, and there was a smile in Michael Grant's eyes. Honey, open your mouth. Ah. When I arrived at the company in the morning, my assistant handed me a contract. Ms. Jiang, later Mr. Pei Jr., of Arcadia Group, will come to discuss the contract with you in person. This is their letter of intent. Mr. Pei Jr. I didn't remember there being such a person in the Arcadia Group. As far as I knew, Arcadia Group was founded by Michael Grant's uncle, Pei Ian. The assistant explained to me. Mr. Pei Jr., whose full name is Ethan Foster, studied overseas before. He was recently parachuted into the Arcadia Group. It is said that he is the adopted son of Mr. Pei Ian. Adopted son. Michael Grant never seemed to have mentioned anything about his uncle, but when I thought about it carefully, I had only been married to Michael Grant for a little over a month. It was normal that I didn't know about it. I opened the document on the table and skimmed through it, then gave instructions to the assistant beside me, then arranged the meeting for 10 o'clock. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door of the conference room opened on time. Ms. Jiang. Hello, I'm Ethan Foster, the representative sent by Arcadia Group. When I saw the man walking towards me, I felt that he looked familiar, but I couldn't remember where I had seen him before. I replied politely. Hello, Mr. Pei. The cooperation negotiation went very smoothly and ended in half an hour. Arcadia Group's degree of cooperation was quite high, but I had a vague sense of resistance towards Ethan Foster. He seemed to be a polite and proper person, but his behavior was very strange from the moment he entered the conference room until now. His gaze seemed to have been fixed on me, and he always maintained the same smile on his face. This feeling reminded me of the person who bumped into me that day and the gaze that had stuck to me. Could Ethan Foster be that person? I suddenly felt a bit disgusted. Ms. Jiang, I wonder if Mr. Gu is feeling better recently. Ethan Foster didn't seem to notice my change in mood and asked with a smile. Michael Grant. I remembered that the news of Michael Grant's car accident and injury had been promptly blocked by Special Assistant Smith. How could he know about it? It seemed that he saw the doubt in my eyes. Ethan Foster smiled and explained. I happened to be there on the day Mr. Gu had the car accident. How is Mr. Gu doing recently? I thought for a moment and gave a brief answer. He's fine. Not knowing the other person's background, I didn't want to reveal too much, but I suddenly thought of the conversation between Special Assistant Smith and Michael Grant that I had heard in the bedroom that morning. On the day Michael Grant had the car accident, The vehicle had been tampered with secretly, and Ethan Foster happened to be there. Could this matter be related to him? I was deep in thought, but Ethan Foster beside me suddenly extended his hand to me in a seemingly friendly manner. Ms. Jiang, happy cooperation. I politely shook his hand in return, but the moment we made contact, the man's grip made my palm ache that I furrowed my brow slightly. In just 1 second, Ethan Foster retracted his hand politely as if it were an accident. I was a bit annoyed, but I saw the smile on Ethan Foster's face becoming more and more eerie. Miss Jiang, see you next week. Next week. The Grant family gala is next week. I'm sure Miss Jiang will attend. Honey, the hospital examination report is out. The doctor said I've recovered well and can do normal activities. I can pick you up from work this afternoon. Honey, you could tell how happy Michael Grant was even through the phone. But just when it was almost time to get off work, it suddenly started to snow. The phone notified me that the meteorological station issued a blue blizzard warning, saying that the extreme heavy snowfall would arrive in half an hour. I looked out through the floor-to-ceiling window in the office, and it was already a sea of white outside. The endless snow was pouring down like a sudden storm. Michael Grant sent me a message 40 minutes ago saying he had set off. The drive that usually takes only 20 minutes didn't seem to end today. I was a bit worried. Just as I was about to call Michael Grant to ask, I received a message from him. Honey, I'm almost there. When I hurried downstairs, I felt the cold wind raging. In just a short time, a thick layer of snow covered the ground. I was glad I didn't wear high heels to work today, or it would have been really hard to walk. The heavy snow was still falling. The few pedestrians on the road were all hurrying home. I waited for a while, and suddenly, there was a rumbling thunder above my head, and the snow seemed to be falling even harder. The thick fog of snow made the sky dim. Vaguely, I seemed to see a tall and straight figure walking towards me. The man came through the snow with a faint, cold light around him. His dark figure blended with the night and contrasted with the snow. It wasn't until a big black umbrella was held above my head that I snapped out of my trance. Michael Grant stood in front of me. His dark and deep eyes were full of passion. Honey, I'm here to take you home. Michael Grant took my hand and led me home. We were both under the same umbrella, but there was a thin layer of snow on his coat. I and the desolate world. It was just the two of us walking side by side, slowly, not in a hurry. When the snow fell on my head, I turned to look at him. Michael Grant and I were just like an old couple in their 80s, strolling hand in hand in the snow. Michael Grant seemed to be afraid that I would get tired from walking, so he stopped and carried me on his back. Every step he took while carrying me was extremely steady. I lay on Michael Grant's back, and we were very close to each other. I in the silent space, I seemed to hear the sound of two hearts beating together. All the snow around became a blur, and the snow that landed on me felt a bit warm. I wanted to keep walking with Michael Grant like this, even if it meant walking to the end of my life. When I woke up in the morning and opened my eyes sleepily, I saw Michael Grant's handsome face up close. The man was sitting beside me, leaning over to look at me, with a faint smile on his lips. Good morning, honey. Before I was fully awake, a kiss landed on my forehead, as gentle as a feather brushing by, making me feel light. Maybe because of our time together last night, there's a tender and lingering ambiguous atmosphere in the bedroom today that seems to surround us. Michael Grant's hand caressed the side of my face. The overly intimate touch made my cheeks turn slightly red. Michael Grant pinched the soft flesh on my face. Honey, can you tie my tie for me? I'm going to work. Sure. Michael Grant gently placed the black tie in my hand. The man's little finger accidentally slid across my palm. The slightly cool touch made me curl my fingers involuntarily. I sat up, took one end of the tie, and passed it around the back of Michael Grant's neck. I looked up and carefully tied the tie for him. Michael Grant leaned over and sat sideways on the edge of the bed, with his hands resting beside me. The man's dark eyes were fixed on me. I was so nervous that my hands started to move clumsily. I didn't control the last tug well, and Michael Grant was pulled right in front of me. We were so close that our breaths were intertwined. The temperature in the room was a bit hot, and the ambiguous atmosphere was getting stronger. I didn't know when the man's hands had moved to my back, and I was pulled into his arms. Michael Grant looked down at me, and a gentle kiss landed on my lips. Before I could react, The touch on my lips deepened. By the time Michael Grant sat in his office, it was already 9:15. Goo, who was always punctual and never late, actually had a day of being late. Special Assistant Smith beside him couldn't help but think to himself, a married man is different, but on the surface. He still respectfully handed the tablet in his hand to Michael Grant. The video on the tablet was playing at an accelerated speed, and Michael Grant watched it with a stern expression. The video was the surveillance footage of the moment Emily Crawford was hit.Mr. Goo. The person who deliberately hit Mrs. Goo that day was. When I came out of the meeting room, the sky had turned a faint orangered. The assistant brought a cup of coffee and placed it on the desk, and took the documents I had already signed away. I turned on my phone that had been on mute for a long time, and as expected, I saw messages from Michael Grant on the screen. Honey, let's eat out tonight. I found a nice restaurant. Let's go there together. In the evening, when I got off work, I saw Michael Grant standing right across from me. Very eye-catching, the man was leaning against a dark Rolls-Royce in a neat suit, even though he was just standing there casually. He exuded an air of coldness and nobility, with an aura that kept people at a distance. When he saw me come out, that natural noble air disappeared completely, and the man quickly walked towards me. Honey, you're off work. Michael Grant always looks happy when he sees me, with stars in his eyes. His puppy-like nature can't be hidden. It was the rush hour after work, and there were people coming and going downstairs of the company. But Michael Grant didn't care at all. He was so showy. It was as if he was just short of writing a big line on his body. I'm Emily Crawford's husband, Michael Grant. The restaurant Michael Grant found was a new Chinese-style restaurant. What caught my eye was the uniquely designed landscape of a traditional Chinese garden. There were pavilions, waterside pavilions, and winding paths, and every step presented a scene full of oriental charm. We went up to the pavilion on the side, which was where Michael Grant and I would have our meal. A bouquet of jasmine flowers with star-shaped edges was placed beside me. Michael Grant asked, Honey, do you like it? I nodded and couldn't help but smile. The fragrance of the jasmine flowers filled my heart. Just like the man sitting in front of me. It would be a lie to say I wasn't touched. Michael Grant always seems to be able to tug at my heartstrings easily, but will he regret it? Will he regret everything he's done now when his memories come back and go back to being that self-disciplined, cold and heartless Michael Grant? And will we go back to being a couple tied together by interests, each getting what they need and treating each other with courtesy? I'm always sober, always restraining myself, and yet always wanting to sink into this happiness. The happier I am, the more uneasy I seem to feel. I'm carefully maintaining everything as it is now, burying all my hidden and secret thoughts deep in my heart. On the day of the family banquet, Michael Grant and I attended in our finest attire. I just didn't expect that Ethan Foster, whom I had met that day, would not show up for a long time. It wasn't until the banquet was almost over that a man in a wheelchair was wheeled in. When I got closer, I realized that the man in the wheelchair was Ethan Foster, the young Mr. Pay of Arcadia Group. Ethan Foster had thick casts on one of his legs and one of his hands, and there were several bruises on his face. No wonder I didn't recognize him at first. Michael Grant seemed a bit unhappy that my gaze lingered on another man for too long, and he sidestepped to block my view. Ethan Foster looked up and glared at Michael Grant, who was standing between us, as if Michael Grant was the one who had caused all his injuries. I was a bit puzzled, but then I saw Michael Grant curl his lips into a faint smile. Looking completely unperturbed, Michael Grant casually swirled the wine in his glass. That simple gesture exuded the confidence and dominance of someone in a position of power, with an aura so strong that it could intimidate everyone around. The banquet hall was filled with the clinking of glasses. Ethan Foster, in silence, wheeled himself out of the hall amidst the hubbub of the crowd, and I didn't know where he went. I in the corridor, I asked Michael Grant in confusion. Ethan Foster from Arcadia Group was perfectly fine when I saw him last week. How did he end up like this today? Michael Grant let out a chuckle upon hearing my question and teased, maybe he touched something he shouldn't have and got taught a lesson. After saying that, Michael Grant put his arm around my waist and whispered in my ear, Honey, if he dares to peek at you again, I'll gouge out his eyes. Although Michael Grant was smiling as he said this, his eyes, looking towards the gazebo outside the window, were extremely cold. A tingling sensation crept into my ear along with the man's breath, making me shiver involuntarily. The Michael Grant in front of me was still as terrifying as ever. It seemed that he could tell what I was thinking, and his hand around my waist suddenly tightened. Michael Grant, like an angry kitten, stared at me and carefully examined my expression. "Honey, what's with that look in your eyes? It's as if I'm going to eat you up." I didn't answer for a while, and Michael Grant's expression became a bit nervous. "Did I scare you, honey?" Just as I was about to speak, I saw a faint, almost imperceptible smile curl up on Michael Grant's lips. "Then you'd better not leave me easily in the future, honey, or I can't promise what I might do." I found Michael Grant's mood swings quite amusing and blurted out, "What? Do you want to eat me up?" As soon as I finished speaking, I saw the man's gaze towards me becoming more and more obscure. Before I knew it, my body was already pressed against a hard and cold object. I felt it was the black metal buckle around the man's waist. Michael Grant deliberately blew softly into my ear. "I've been wanting to for a long time, honey. How about..." The man hesitated. "How about tonight?" The family banquet ended, and the new year was approaching. It was also the first new year that Michael Grant and I would spend together. Michael Grant seemed to attach great importance to it. Early in the morning, he wanted to drag me to the supermarket to do the shopping himself. We bought Spring Festival couplets, horseshoe ornaments, dried fruits, and gifts. Even the red lanterns hanging in the yard were carefully selected by Michael Grant. 1 shopping cart wasn't enough to hold everything, so Michael Grant called his bodyguard to check out and take away the selected items. Only after we had finished shopping did Michael Grant, satisfied, take my hand and leave. It was already getting late in the evening when we finished our meal at a nearby restaurant. I decided to take Michael Grant to the nearby mall for a stroll and to work off some of the food. This should be the first time Michael Grant accompanied me shopping. But as soon as we entered the mall, the man suddenly stopped. Michael Grant took out a bank card from his suit pocket and handed it to me. "Honey, the password is your birthday. Just go wild with it." I was taken aback for a moment and wondered if Michael Grant had secretly been reading some domineering CEO novels behind my back recently. Why did the scenario seem so familiar? I then took out a card from my bag, blinked my bright eyes, and put it in Michael Grant's hand. "The password is also my birthday. You can go wild with it too." We looked at each other. Michael Grant's dark eyes stared straight at me, and I couldn't hide the hint of mischief in my eyes. After a while, I was laughing so hard that I could barely straighten up. Michael Grant held my arm and stood beside me, patting my back gently with a helpless and doting look, afraid that I would laugh too hard and have trouble catching my breath after a shopping spree in the mall. Michael Grant carried 5 or 6 shopping bags in one hand and held my hand tightly with the other. What Michael Grant didn't know was that among those shopping bags, there was a New Year's gift I had prepared for him. While the man was on the phone, I secretly asked the salesperson to hide the wrapped gift in one of the shopping bags, using the newly bought clothes to cover it up. I thought Michael Grant hadn't noticed, and I happily held his hand and went home. Only the staff who had been standing nearby knew the truth. Mr. Gu had already noticed. He had seen my every move. The call that had already ended was still held to his ear just to cooperate with me. It was only when I had completely hidden the gift that the call finally ended. When the New Year's bell rang, Michael Grant, I didn't know when, had stood behind me and pulled me into his arms. Fireworks burst outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, shining with brilliant and dazzling light. In an instant, they illuminated the entire night sky. And in another instant, they faded into complete darkness. The light and shadow in the living room intertwined, rising and falling, never ceasing. The man's slender fingers caressed my slender neck, and he swept my slightly sweaty long hair from the back of my neck to the front. Suddenly, I felt a cool sensation on my neck. I looked down and saw a necklace around my neck. The unique star-shaped diamond was exquisitely beautiful, shining like a star in the sky. I suddenly realized that Michael Grant seemed to have a great fondness for star elements. The bouquet he gave me last time had star-shaped edges. I could also see many star elements on the watch and cuffs he usually wore. Even the necklace he gave me today was star-shaped. I turned around and smiled at Michael Grant, saying, "Happy New Year, Michael Grant." Michael Grant looked at me with a burning gaze, his eyes filled with undiminished love. The man said very seriously, "Emily Crawford, Happy New Year." As the man's words fell, I seemed to hear the sound of the wall in my heart, which had been built up for so long, crumbling and falling apart piece by piece from the inside out. It wasn't Honey, but Emily Crawford. This should be the first time Michael Grant has called me by my name since he lost his memory, unlike his previous cold and distant manner. Now his tone was filled with endless tenderness and affection. Michael Grant held me tightly in his arms, burying his head in the crook of my neck and staying there for a long time. I could hardly believe it. I seemed to feel a slight dampness in the crook of my neck. Was Michael Grant crying? I wished so much that time would stop at that moment forever. We held each other tightly, expressing our hidden love to the fullest. In that quiet moment that I wasn't aware of, Michael Grant's heart was also pounding violently. The New Year's wish he had made many years ago finally came true today. At the age of 25, Michael Grant finally said those long overdue words. Happy New Year to Emily Crawford. In the 12 years that he had been absent in the past, and in countless new years in the past and future, I wish you a happy new year. Chew 1. Michael Grant will always love Emily Crawford. The 5th day of the first lunar month is the day to welcome the god of wealth, and it's also the annual Valentine's Day, with 2 happy events happening on the same day. I reserved a restaurant early in the morning, planning to give Michael Grant a surprise, but I didn't expect that in the afternoon. My assistant called and said that there was a problem with the cooperation between the company and a real estate developer, and the other party needed me to communicate with them in person. I took a look at the cooperation materials sent by the assistant. There were indeed some flaws in the documents that required communication and coordination between the 2 sides. After organizing the materials, I asked the driver to take me to the location specified by the other party, guided by the waiter in a waistcoat. I walked through a dim corridor before reaching a thick mahogany door. I pushed open the private room, but it was empty inside. Before I could react, I felt a pain in my back, and I fainted to the ground. When I woke up again, the first thing I saw was Ethan Foster in a white shirt and black pants sitting in front of me. The injuries on Ethan Foster seemed to have healed. His pair of sinister eyes were fixed on me. I tried to move my body but found that I was completely weak and could only slump on the ground. There were thick black ropes tied around my wrists and ankles, and my skin was already red from the tightness. The room was very dark, and the only light came from an incandescent lamp beside a table not far away. You're awake, Emily Crawford. The man sat on the chair with his hands folded, looking down at me condescendingly. I opened my mouth, but my lips were so dry that it was even difficult to speak. Why did you tie me up? Ethan Foster smiled and leaned back in the shadow, looking even more sinister and eerie. The man's voice was hoarse and sinister, and the words he said made me feel terrified. Because I like you, Emily Crawford. I've been secretly watching you for a long time, from the first time I saw you in junior high school until now, Emily Crawford. Every time I see you, I can't help but want to get closer and touch you, the man said with a sigh, and his cold fingers slowly touched my cheek. I used all my strength to move to the side. Ethan Foster's hand hung in the air, and there was a hint of viciousness in his eyes. It's a pity that Michael Grant got to you before me and took you away from me. Then he told me a story. An orphan abandoned by his parents was adopted by a wealthy businessman, but the businessman was very busy, always occupied with running the company and often traveling between different countries. So he had no time to take care of the boy. After providing all the necessary materials and resources for his life, the businessman never showed any concern for him. The little boy grew up in the countryside, and no one had ever taught him about manners and etiquette. So, in the noble school full of children of top elites, he was often laughed at and insulted by others. Just then, a girl appeared. She enthusiastically took him to get a campus card, taught him how to eat in the smart canteen, and how to borrow books from the library. She never laughed at his clumsiness. She always helped him carefully and took care of him. The kindness she exuded deeply attracted Ethan Foster, who was weak and timid and being bullied at that time. Unfortunately, not long after, the wealthy businessman transferred him to a school abroad for some reason. Since then, he could never forget the girl who had briefly illuminated his life, Emily Crawford. Would you like to be with me? Ethan Foster looked at me and said. His voice was very soft, but there was a morbid obsession in his eyes that I had never seen before. At first, I was indeed a bit touched by this story, but my touch was only for myself at that time. I shook my head at Ethan Foster. Even if I had another chance, I wouldn't regret helping you at that time. But Ethan Foster, I don't like you. My tone was very firm. Ethan Foster smiled. As if my answer was exactly what he expected. You've fallen for Michael Grant, haven't you? But he's been lying to you all along. Emily Crawford. He's been using his amnesia to deceive your feelings and win your care and sympathy. Ethan Foster's words didn't stir any emotions in me. My calmness seemed to make the man realize a fact. And there was a hint of collapse and ferocity on Ethan Foster's face. You've always known, haven't you, Emily Crawford? You've always known that Michael Grant has been lying to you. And you've always known that he's not amnesiac. You fell for Michael Grant a long time ago, Emily Crawford. The man grabbed my shoulders like he was crazy, shaking my body, desperately wanting to get an opposite answer from me. Yes, I've liked him for a long time. The iron door of the room was kicked open, and a familiar figure ran towards me against the light, hugging me tightly in his arms. More than a dozen bodyguards in black immediately surrounded the room and pinned the crazy Ethan Foster to the ground. The effect of the drug in my body hadn't worn off yet, and my head was dizzy. The cold scent of the man filled my nostrils. I looked at Michael Grant, whose face was anxious and full of tension and worry, and said word by word, Emily Crawford has liked Michael Grant for a long time. Emily Crawford and Michael Grant's encounter seemed to be even earlier. 80-year-old Emily Crawford met 12-year-old Michael Grant. That day was a family banquet. The 80-year-old Chuan secretly ran to the small garden behind the banquet hall to play by herself, against her parents' wishes. While playing, she accidentally tripped over a small stone on the grass and fell. The girl's white puffy dress got some dirt on it, and her knees were also red and swollen from the fall. Little Chuan sat on the grass alone, crying helplessly, with streaks of dirt on her face. The adults were all chatting loudly in the banquet hall, and no one noticed little Chuan crying in the small garden until a teenager in a black Western-style dress stood in front of her and reached out his hand to her. Don't be afraid. I'll help you up. The teenager had a cold face, and his tone was also cold, but his gradually reddening ears betrayed his nervousness at that moment. Little Chuan showed a smile. She thought the eyes of this strange brother in front of her were as beautiful as the stars in the sky, under the starry night sky. The boy and the girl sat side by side on the white swing in the small garden. The night wind blew, gently lifting the pure white swing and also stirring up the unknown feelings in their hearts. Brother, do you have any wishes? Wishes. Yes, wishes. I have a big wish. What kind of wish? I want to start a really big company in the future and help a lot of people. Then my wish is the same as yours. At that time, we can help each other and achieve win-win cooperation. The girl was a bit confused. She blinked her big eyes and looked at the teenager beside her in confusion, asking, Brother, what does win-win cooperation mean? The teenager touched the messy hair on the girl's head and patiently explained. Win-win cooperation means that we will help each other in the future, grow together, and achieve this wish together. Okay. I want to achieve this wish with my brother, the girl said firmly, her eyes shining with bright light. Later, Emily Crawford started a company of her own, and she also met Michael Grant, who reached out to help her again in her moment of crisis. When Michael Grant heard Emily Crawford tell this story, he was suddenly surrounded by great surprise, and his eyes gradually became moist. He had always thought that Emily Crawford didn't remember what happened when they were children. So when the girl he had been thinking about for many years faced a company crisis, he couldn't wait to approach her. He harshly bound himself to her and signed a fake marriage agreement. He had always thought that Emily Crawford didn't like him and might even hate this relationship that he had despicably bound. He pretended to be cold and heartless to hide his true feelings. It wasn't until the car accident happened and in that life and death moment that he realized that his inner desire hadn't been satisfied by this relationship. He wanted Emily Crawford's heart to get a little closer to him, and just a little bit would make him content. Michael Grant seemed to be crying again. The cold liquid dripped onto my face. The man's eyes were red at the corners, and he said in a hoarse voice, Chuan, I'm sorry. I'm late. The boy in the story has also liked Emily Crawford for a very long time. Before the Lantern Festival, when I was looking for documents in the study, I accidentally found 12 envelopes at the bottom of the safe. Each envelope contained neatly folded letter papers that had turned a bit yellowed. I took the letter out of the envelope. There was a thick stack of papers full of writing. The beginning of each letter paper was Emily Crawford, and the signature at the end was Michael Grant. The time spanned a full 12 years. I held back the tears that were welling up in my eyes and opened the first letter. Emily Crawford. I hope this letter finds you well. How have you been recently? It's been 5 months since we last met. I've wanted to go find you and play together these 5 months. But the studies in junior high school are very demanding. Plus, my father has arranged a series of courses and activities for me, so I haven't been able to find the time to see you many times. I planned to finish all the holiday homework and tasks in one night so that I could go to the amusement park with you the next day. But unexpectedly, after my father found out, he arranged even more courses for me, hoping that I would be more sensible and motivated, although I'm a bit disappointed. I also enjoy the fun of studying. This way, I can achieve our wish earlier, to start a really big company and help a lot of people. By the way, I have a copy of The Little Prince that I want to give you. I've read this book many times, and I'm sure you'll like it too, even if it means risking shedding tears. I want to form a bond with you, Emily Crawford. Happy New Year. Michael Grant, 13 years old. February 10th, 2012. And until the last letter, Emily Crawford. I hope this letter finds you well. When I'm writing this letter, it's been 12 years since we first met. In these 12 years, even when I was overseas, I often paid attention to your whereabouts. That indescribable emotion has spread in my heart as time went by. The wish that I once promised to achieve with you, I have never given up on it until now. When I'm alone, I habitually look up at the stars in the night sky, because I remember that once I saw a very dazzling star, and that dazzling star, just like what's written in the book, illuminated a desolate universe. Chuan. On my way home from the company today, I saw an old couple holding hands as they passed by. They were holding hands and walking with a smile in this vast white world. It seemed that no difficulties or setbacks could stop their steps. At that moment, I realized that love is the most beautiful word in this world. I'm very sorry for missing you all these years, but I also believe that we will meet again now. The first snow outside hasn't melted yet. How I wish I could hold your hand and walk side by side with you under the starry night sky. I know the stars in the night sky tonight must be very beautiful because of your presence. Chuan. I miss you so much. No matter what the way is, I want to be by your side forever. As I'm writing this, Christmas has arrived. The lights are on in thousands of homes outside the window, and the fireworks are brilliant. I hope that soon I can stand beside you and say to you in person, Emily Crawford. Happy New Year. Michael Grant, 24 years old. January 22nd, 2023. After reading the last letter, I realized that my tears had already soaked the letter paper in my hand. Michael Grant's love has always been so deep and implicit. His love was powerful enough to make me crumble without a fight. There is a sentence in the book, oranges are not the only fruit. I long for someone to love me passionately until death, understanding that love is as powerful as death. And Michael Grant is the one who is in tune with my soul. He has laid out all his sincere and passionate love in front of me. It turns out that all those seemingly coincidental moments were the result of our mutual efforts towards each other. At the age of 25, Michael Grant finally got to marry Emily Crawford, the girl he had kept in his heart and loved for a long time. At the same time, Emily Crawford had also kept him in her heart and loved him for a long time.